the most profound quote that I think I've ever heard regarding the necessary mindset that must be adopted to truly embrace personal development goes like this: growth and comfort do not coexist. I'll say it again. Growth and comfort do not coexist. I got that from the CEO of a company I used to work for, and I was in this phase where I was really starting to begin down that path of growing and coming into my own and recognizing there was so much unlocked potential that I just had to actually go get. It wasn't gonna show up, not by default, but by design. And so when I recognized that, 6 words could completely reframe the way that we look at putting effort into things and, breaking a sweat, so to speak. And I was able to make this connection thinking, what about other, why is this so new? What about other times when I've grown? Thinking about being a teenager and going through sports and really starting to get into working out, lifting weights, hardcore exercising, and recognizing all of that seemed so uncomfortable at the time. But what was I doing? I was in the middle of another growth phase. So it made sense that I was uncomfortable because I was growing. And so even though the analogy came at a basic level connected to physical effort and investment in myself in that way, growth and comfort do not coexist. And looking at that from the standpoint of how we go through, building a business or developing a family or working on a valuable relationship with a spouse or significant other, it's not always comfortable. You're growing. And so I had a quick reminder that today when I actually had an opportunity to kind of see that in someone else, it's like, oh, that's what one of those growth moments looks like. And the reason I'm sharing it is not so much about the specifics of the individual that I saw experience this, but more so the reminder that sometimes it's supposed to happen like that. You're supposed to squirm in your seat a little bit when you have that aha moment. It's supposed to unfold that way sometimes when the light bulb comes on over your head. And the aha I had just really had to deal with the beliefs that we have in our mind and the way that can kind of create a world that doesn't exist. And you can be living on this planet that doesn't exist all through a set of thoughts that kind of go off on a tangent and allow to run wild. It's kind of like, these days, I think it's safe to say everyone's heard of a hallucination in the realm of AI. You're having a chat and then all of a sudden you're getting some feedback. It's out in left field. You said, where did that come from? And so it's almost kind of like that when we have beliefs that are rooted in something that, has been installed, some programming that's been installed within us from once upon a time, from way back. And we look at a situation and what's likely to be the outcome, and we kind of sum it up, right? Because we already have a preconceived set of views. But then when we go into this growth phase, we can become uncomfortable because we're getting new inputs, we're getting new data. And sometimes you're going to have new data that collides, clashes, conflicts, or seems completely opposite or contradictory to pre-existing programs. So what do? When you're on a path to try and get through the world that you're in, and the path that you're on is presenting you scenarios that challenge the beliefs you already have installed. And so what you recognize is it's almost like a scenario where, are things harder than they're supposed to be? Or are you recognizing that some things that you've been holding on to aren't really serving you anymore? And so that's typically what we find puts us on that growth journey to begin with. We start to think, things ain't always the way things ain't seeming the way they ought to be. And based on that, we can find ourselves confused, frustrated, annoyed that we're not in the control seat that we thought we'd be in. We're not in a position of dictatorship that our ego wants to have. And so that's part of what can start that journey. We're looking for a better ability to manipulate our circumstances in life. And through that growth process, information becomes revealed to us that we must consider, try it on for size. And we realize, this kind of fits, but when I step into the situation, it feels funny. Because what you're learning may tell you, move forward in faith, move forward, don't be afraid of what's next. But your programming may say, hey, you got to know what the 88th step is, the 92nd step is, the 99th step, and you're on step 3, 4, 5. And sometimes there's a process of trusting the learning process to deliver on what's going to get you past the hurdle that you're staring at that seems 10 feet tall. And so looking at the scenario where we can see that there are moments when we have to kind of let that battle of the mind play out. The old and the new have to kind of duke it out to see who wins. And being able to see that externally is kind of powerful because let's say if you're in a classroom setting, someone asks a question and they're saying, but yeah, so wait a minute, you mean to tell me, if 1 + 1 is really 2, I got to stop believing that it's 1.5. Yes. Oh my gosh. And so while the example may seem silly, in this case, in real life, when you're presenting with something that's a monumental shift from what you've always held on to, it can be tough to let that go in a flash. It can be tough to just stop processing your thoughts in the old way and shift them to the new way, especially when you realize you're at that crossroads and you're like, wait a minute. You mean to tell me that this new way really is it? That means I have to completely let go, because it's the opposite. I got to let go of this other thing. Are you telling me that? If the answer is yes, it's like, whoa. And that's when the breakthrough happens, because you're breaking with the prior attachment of how you looked at the world. It's how you learn how to see better. You realize your prior view wasn't it. It wasn't it. It was it for a while. But either the world changes, you change, or you come to rise to the level where you see that there are those limits to how that idea, concept, or belief might hold up. At a certain level, that's going to get challenged, threatened, or potentially obliterated. And how are you going to handle that? Can you set down the old to pick up the new? What are you willing to give up to go up? So that's what I wanted to kind of touch on in this instance, just the idea that our internal defense mechanisms can pop up at the most inopportune times. They pop up right when you're ready to have that breakthrough. They pop up when you're ready to say, hey, I think I've got this figured out. But it's the internal defense mechanism saying, no, but wait, if we go off into the unknown, we won't know what to do. Let's say if you're a great chef, you know how to cook real good. Someone says, or people say, everybody's in your ear for the longest, like, you should open a restaurant. And you're like, yeah, sounds good. And maybe one day they get in your ear and you're kind of serious about it. Like, wow, maybe I should open a restaurant. So you get all excited and you're about ready to open a restaurant, but then that old belief system kicks in and says, well, wait a minute, if I open this restaurant, well, how am I going to serve all these people? Well, wait a minute, we haven't even opened the doors yet. You're worried about being slammed and how you're going to handle that. Because everybody knows once, the restaurant blows up and it starts doing great, you're going to have staff that you can hire to, serve the people and wash the dishes. And all you got to do is cook. Everything's going to be easy. And the next question, be like, yeah, you're right. Well, but, oh my gosh, what are we going to do when we need to expand to 2 locations and because we're doing so well? And it's like, Wait, what? Great question, but is that paralyzing us now? Why are we worried about that now? It's not a problem yet. It's not a problem yet. Oh my gosh, but okay. So if the restaurant, I'm a good chef and I'm opening a restaurant, and oh my gosh, what am I going to do when the restaurant's packed and there's a line around the corner and we haven't even opened the doors to the restaurant. It's not time to worry about that yet. Let's worry about step one. Getting the business plan together, getting all that together and getting open. Then we can worry about when we blow up and when we, have the best deal in town or the best, most popular place and, booked for night after night. We'll worry about those problems when we get there. And then there's a support system, a structure, a mechanism to be able to get you through that. But if we get so hung up that we can't get out of the gate because our minds want to complete that full staircase, some minds need to close that loop. They need to see the entire pathway. It's a natural, logical thinking process, but in certain instances, it can really impede your action because you're thinking so far ahead, trying to control the outcome based on beliefs and know-how and smarts, but we really don't know, especially when we're moving into the unknown. And that's part of what's bringing that discomfort is we're moving into the unknown because we're growing. And so then there's that part of us that wants to hold back and be like, whoa, wait. But if you become successful, then everyone's going to know you're successful and they might look at you differently. Well, they should look at you differently because you're successful now. I mean, how do you how do you want to take this thing? So the idea that some things are like built in to say, no, wait, hold it. That might be too much change. That might be too drastic, too something, too different, too this, too that. It's the two element. And at like a cultural, social level, it's almost like the herd mentality. Don't go too far from the herd. We must protect you. Don't do anything too different, even internally. It's like, don't go eating a bunch of salads and taking walks around the block and eating books and smiling at people and saying hello. Because that might make someone nice say hi back. That might make you get a little healthier. That might make you gain some health and release, other burdens. Why wouldn't we want that? Well, because in certain instances, when it seems a little bit foreign or so different or too something, too much a shift from the norm, that's when the internal defense mechanisms come in. That's where the resistance starts to come in. That's when there's that, hold up, wait a minute. This is a little too. And then there goes that battle of the mind playing out again. So once you start to recognize it, that's really the win in all of this, the trigger. When you see, oh, okay, it's got this hesitation, this kind of pump fake action going because internal defense mechanisms are kicking in, which ought to be that hint. It's like, okay, I'm knowing and I'm growing. So it's expected that the universe is showing a little resistance. It's almost like you're being tested. Because what's still within you that has to like die off or purge out or whatever you want to call it, it's still there fighting it. It's fighting it because it's too much growth, too different. And since that's that growth moving in, comfort you feel moving out is that internal disturbance that you can detect sometimes in your tummy, sometimes in your chest, sometimes in your head, on your mind. Feeling our muscles sometimes, our body can get tight. But no one's half the battle in making that recognition to say, okay, if I'm fighting this so bad, but what I'm fighting, if I can step back and see that like I'm kind of fighting what I'm wanting, that doesn't make sense. Don't fight what you want. Don't ride the gas and the brake at the same time. Doesn't provide the desired result. So, something to think of. If you are in growth mode and you're feeling uncomfortable, guess what? It's supposed to be that way. It's by design. Growth and comfort do not coexist. We got some value out of that one here today. Keep growing. Keep feeling those growing pains and knowing they will subside as you become a better version of you. Keep leveling up and learning how to see better. This is your host, Drew Davis, and I will catch you on the next episode of Learn How to See Better. It's the only podcast out there that will improve your vision the longer you listen.